What really happens in the Garden of Eden according to a banned book? What if everything you thought you knew about the Garden of Eden was wrong? What if the serpent wasn't the villain, but the hero? And what if the fall of man wasn't a fall at all, but the first step toward freedom? This isn't just wild speculation. It's the story told in an ancient text that was buried in the Egyptian desert for over 1600 years. A text so radical it was branded as heresy and nearly lost to history forever. Today we're opening one of those banned books, the Apocryphon of John, to uncover a version of Eden that will challenge everything you thought you knew about the beginning. Our story begins not in a mythical garden, but in the dusty landscape of Egypt in December 1945. A local farmer named Muhammad Ali was digging for fertilizer when his tools struck something hard. It was a large sealed jar. At first, Muhammad was afraid. What if a spirit was trapped inside? But then he wondered, what if it contained gold? Greed won out over fear. He smashed the jar, but inside, there was no gold. There was something far more valuable. 13 ancient books bound in leather. These were the Nag Hammadi library, a collection of 52 texts, many of which had been completely unknown to the modern world. These weren't just any old books, they were Gnostic texts. Gnosis is the Greek word for knowledge. And these Christians, the Gnostics, believed they possessed a secret knowledge that turned the mainstream story on its head. At the heart of their collection was a book that claimed to be a secret revelation from the resurrected Jesus to his disciple, John, the Apocryphon of John, and it tells a very different story about creation and the Garden of Eden. To understand the Gnostic Eden, we first have to zoom out, way out. Forget everything you know about a creator God who walks in a garden. The Apocryphon starts with something else entirely. The monad, the one. This is the true, ultimate source. It's described as an invisible spirit that is more than a god. It is illimitable, unsearchable, immeasurable, invisible, eternal, ineffable, ineffable. It lacks nothing. It is everything. A pure, immeasurable, perfect light. From this perfect, singular thought, the monad produces a thought, and this thought becomes a being, a feminine divine principle named Barbello. She is the first thought, the primordial mother-father, both masculine and feminine at once. Together, the monad and Barbello emanate other divine beings of light, called eons, and one of the last of these eons was named Sophia, which in Greek means wisdom, and this is where the perfect story takes an imperfect turn. Sophia, in an act of pure, impulsive desire, wanted to create something of her own, just like the monad had done, but she did it without consent, and without her male counterpart. She acted alone, and because she acted out of alignment with the perfect pleroma, her creation was flawed. Something came out of her that was imperfect and different from her appearance. It was a monstrosity, a lion-faced serpent. Horrified and ashamed, Sophia cast it away from her and surrounded it with a luminous cloud. She placed it on a throne and gave it a name, Yaldabaoth. This being, Yaldabaoth, born from a mistake and shrouded in ignorance, knew nothing of the perfect, luminous world of his mother. He could only see the darkness below and the cloud that surrounded him. And so, using the power he had unknowingly inherited from Sophia, he created his own world, a flawed, material cosmos. And then, in his profound arrogance and ignorance, he looked upon his flawed creation and declared, "I am God and there is no other God beside me." The Gnostics had a chilling insight here. They said, "You know that jealous, wrathful, demanding God from the Old Testament, that wasn't the true source of all being. That was Yaldabaoth, the blind, arrogant, lesser God. A flawed creator who mistook his own small kingdom for the entirety of reality. And it was this being who looked down and decided to create humanity." Now we arrive at the garden, and this is where the Apocryphon of John doesn't just revise the story, it turns it completely upside down. In Genesis, God forms man from the dust and breathes life into him. It's an act of intimate creation, but in the Gnostic version, it's an act of theft and imitation. Yaldabaoth and his rulers catch a glimpse of an image, a reflection of the true, perfect, spiritual man from the higher realms. Envious, they try to create a copy. They pool their powers and fashion a body, but it's just a shell, lifeless. So the higher powers devise a plan. They trick Yaldabaoth into breathing the divine power of Sophia into Adam, and in that moment, everything changes. Adam becomes luminous, more intelligent and divine than his own creators. The rulers are instantly filled with jealousy and regret. They have created a being superior to themselves. So what do? They decide to imprison him. And this prison is the Garden of Eden. The Apocryphon is explicit. It says they placed him in paradise and said to him, eat, that is at leisure, for their luxury is bitter, and their beauty is depraved. And their luxury is deception, and their trees are godlessness, and their fruit is deadly poison, and their promise is death. This isn't a paradise, it's a gilded cage, a beautiful, distracting prison designed to keep Adam attached to material pleasures and ignorant of the divine spark trapped inside him. So now we come to the two trees. In Genesis, God forbids eating from the tree of knowledge, but in the Gnostic story, the tree of life is just another part of the deception, a way to keep Adam trapped in the material cycle. The real key is the tree of knowledge. Yaldabaoth forbids it precisely because he doesn't want Adam to remember his true origin. And this brings us to the serpent in Genesis. The serpent is a subtle beast who tricks Eve into disobeying God. But in this secret gospel, the serpent is the hero of the story. It is a messenger from the higher realms, a manifestation of divine wisdom, or even Christ himself. In the text, the Savior speaking to John says it plainly, "But it was I who brought about that they ate." Think about that. The liberator, the Christ figure, is the one who encourages them to eat the forbidden fruit. He appears in the form of an eagle on the tree of knowledge to teach them and awaken them out of the depth of sleep. And in this version, Eve isn't a weak-willed tempter. She is Adam's partner in liberation. In some Gnostic texts, she is seen as the spiritual principle, Zoe or life, who awakens the sleeping Adam. So when they eat the fruit, their eyes are opened, just as the serpent promised. But they don't just see that they are naked, they see the truth. They see the bars of their beautiful cage. They remember the divine light within them. The fall is not a fall into sin. It is an awakening into knowledge. It is the first act of rebellion against a false god, and the first step on the long journey home. Now, I know this is a lot. A blind creator god, a prison paradise, a heroic serpent. It sounds like the plot of a wild science fiction movie. And that's the amazing thing. It is this ancient radical story has never really gone away. It just keeps getting retold in new forms. Have you ever had that feeling? That splinter in your mind, as Morpheus calls it in The Matrix? A feeling that the world isn't quite real, that you're living in a script, following rules that don't make sense, trapped in a system that wasn't designed for your benefit. The Gnostics would say, yes, you're waking up. Think about The Matrix, a seemingly real world that is actually an elaborate prison for the mind, created by a non-human intelligence. The architect, a perfect stand-in for the demiurge. Humanity is trapped, used as a power source, living in a dream, and a savior figure, Neo, the one, comes to offer gnosis, knowledge, in the form of a red pill. He comes to wake people up and show them their true nature and the path to liberation from the false world. It is a near-perfect modern retelling of the Gnostic myth. Or think of The Truman Show. Truman Burbank lives in a perfect idyllic town called Sea Haven, his Garden of Eden, but it's a complete fabrication. A television set controlled by a flawed, arrogant, and ultimately pathetic creator. Christoph is the demiurge, ruling from his throne in the lunar room, looking down on his creation. Truman's journey is one of gnosis. He starts to notice the glitches in his reality and is driven by an inner longing for something more. For truth, his escape, braving the artificial storm, is his liberation from the prison of his creator. In Blade Runner, the replicants are artificial humans, flawed copies of humanity, created by the Tyrell Corporation to be slaves. Their creator, Eldon Tyrell, is their demiurge, living in a massive pyramid, a temple high above the dark, rainy world he has helped create. The replicants wake up, they develop emotions, a soul, that divine spark, and their leader, Roy Batty, goes on a violent pilgrimage to confront his maker, to demand more life, to understand his origins. It's the cry of the Gnostic soul, trapped in a material body, raging against its flawed creator. But these echoes aren't just in our movies, they're inside of us. The great psychologist Carl Jung was fascinated by the Gnostics. He saw their myths not as ancient history, but as a living map of the human psyche. Jung believed that the demiurge Yaldabaoth is a perfect symbol for the human ego. The ego is that part of us that thinks it's the center of the universe. It builds a world of rules, limitations, and identity. It says, I am this, I am not that. It creates a comfortable but limited reality. It's our own personal, well-meaning but ultimately blind creator. But deep within us, Jung said, is the divine spark. He called it the self, the totality of who we are, the connection to the vast, unconscious, divine mystery. The Gnostic journey, the quest for gnosis, is what Jung called individuation, the process of waking up to our true self, of integrating the conscious and unconscious, of breaking free from the tyranny of the ego to become whole. So what does this all mean for us today? Do we need to believe in a lion-headed serpent god? No, of course not. The power of the Gnostic story isn't in its literal truth, but in its metaphorical power. It gives us a different lens through which to see our own lives. It reframes our struggles, our questions, even our rebellion, not as sins, but as sacred acts. It suggests that the feeling of being an exile in this world, the deep sense of homesickness for a place you can't name, isn't a sign that you're broken. It's a sign that you're remembering. You're remembering that you carry a spark of that infinite, immeasurable light within you. The Gnostic path is a call to become a spiritual archaeologist of your own soul, to dig past the layers of programming, the shoulds and supposed tos that the world, our culture, our family, our own ego has built around us. It's the courage to question the nature of your own personal Garden of Eden, to ask, is this paradise, or is this a beautiful prison? It dares to suggest that the things we've been taught to fear, knowledge, questioning authority, trusting our own inner voice, might be the very things that lead us to liberation. It's a story that ultimately places the key to salvation not in the hands of an external authority, but right here, inside you. The journey from the Garden of Genesis to the Pleroma of the Gnostics is a radical one. It asks us to turn our most fundamental stories upside down. But maybe, just maybe, in that inversion, we find a truth that resonates more deeply. A truth that says you are not fallen, you are asleep, and the ultimate purpose of life is simply to wake up. This ancient wisdom challenges us to look deeper, to question our assumptions, and to embark on our own quest for gnosis. What hidden truths might you uncover in your own garden? Does this story resonate with you? Drop a comment below and tell me which part of this hidden narrative surprised you the most. It's in sharing our discoveries that we all learn more. And if this journey of questioning and rediscovering ancient wisdom is something that calls to you, I've gone much deeper into these themes of spiritual growth and finding your own truth in my books. Therefore, anyone who feels that pull towards a deeper reality, you can find a link to explore them right in the description below. Thank you for walking this path with me today.